This is an expanded version of a theory I deposited back with Misconceptions Volume 2, though this is sort of a current definitive version of it. I feel like the entire community was completely off with Immortal and the Restless, focusing too literally on the familial connections of like a literal mother, a baby and father, and the father denying the baby is his, even though it clearly is. And not enough on what's actually being shown here. How are these characters interacting? What are they talking about? The first, and in my opinion, clearest clue to what was going on with Immortal and the Restless is when Mike says in the survival logbook that in the section about what characters he relates to, he says, Clara from Immortal and the Restless because everything about this place is crazy and no one seems to notice except me. And if you go back to Immortal and the Restless with this context, everything changes. Mike is Clara, or at least relates to Clara as a similar person and character. Someone who sees time and time again the supernatural and abstract and weird phenomenon around them, and yet the very authority they go to try and get help with it all tells them that time and time again, it's all mundane, it's all boring. Kids just get hyper and run around. Things just happen sometimes. Phone Guy dismisses everything with locked up servos, mistaken AI, lacking night mode support, uncertain engineers that made robots with faulty programming. We as the players and Mike obviously know that's not what's happening. On top of that, it's clear throughout the whole thing, and especially by the end, that Vlad is lying through his teeth, very aware the child is his and trying to dodge responsibility. I think Vlad is a bit of a catch-all stand-in for William and Fazbear Entertainment, or at least that's what he represents to Mike, and he represents everything in Mike's way of learning about the truth of Freddy's. I think we can take this even further. Thinking of the story through this angle, Immortal and the Restless is one of the best sources of subtle confirmations and potential clues through the story. It might not be the definitive list, but it definitely helps us in many regards. For example, in Mike's monologue, he mentions how William is the one who sent him down there to put Elizabeth back together. And at the end of Immortal and the Restless, Clara finally gets Vlad to admit the kid is his through a slip-up about him buying a kid's meal. I think it's almost a direct prequel moment to the gameplay of Sister Location. Mike, after years of pestering William about something being wrong, finally gets him to slip and admit something is off. Maybe not entirely, maybe not like a whole admission of guilt that he killed kids or anything like that, but enough to get William to admit the information and maybe even send Mike down there in the first place, whether it be to shut him up like, here, take a look if you're so interested in what's going on, or maybe to get him killed like, to tie up the loose ends by sending him to a death trap, or genuinely he wants to pull him into the loop to figure out what's going on, or he just had work he needed to get done down there related to Elizabeth that he might as well send Mike down to answer his questions and maybe get him killed along the way, since both kind of benefit William at the end of the day. And with the context of FNaF 1 with Mike as the night guard, because everything about this place is crazy and no one seems to notice except me, confirms that he was definitely a security guard at some point because he's entering this in a security guard's logbook, and did spend some time in the haunted establishments, enough to the point where he could know something's off and something's unnatural. Especially since almost all of his logbook writing is either a joke about destroying the animatronics, or talking about how you should be afraid and run from the animatronics, which gives us even more insight into Mike's actions. It also basically confirms Mike Schmidt being him, because, when else would he experience all of this? And while it's often seen with Mike tampering with animatronics because he's trying to do something with Remnant or freeing souls, which I even kind of believed for a while, I think after this revelation, it's more of an ongoing investigation, him trying to get to the bottom of all the madness. Maybe even him trying to find solid proof his dad killed the kids, especially as Help Wanted stated, nothing was ever proven in a court of law. So him looking for evidence that his dad killed kids, either to get him arrested or maybe just to prove to himself that his dad's a killer, would track. And it just so happens that at the end of his trail, when he finally finds the last place that his dad admits that there's something about, his best proof runs into the sewers and his dad becomes a corpse rabbit. Not to mention, you might even be able to make an argument that these cutscenes confirm that Mike is the FNaF 3 guard, since Clara burns down Vlad's house, along with Phone Dude saying the place is flammable, could be inspiration for his actions later down the road. Not only does this link to his ranch showing William crawling out of Fazbear Frights' fire,
he tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
Since it says they burn us, as opposed to he released us in the same spiel, it shows the vengeful spirit knows who Henry is and considers him separate from they burn us, or maybe as a part of they burn us. The point is, they burn us is plural. It is not a lack of identity situation where the vengeful spirit doesn't know who burned them. It is clearly plurals. Someone other than Henry burned William at some point. And Mike relates to a character who will burn down a house, has been a security guard in the past, and his monologue ends with a shot of Fazbear Frights, and the logbook he fills out has tons of imagery of Fazbear's Fright. And we know the FNaF 3 guard came back after not seeing anything worthwhile. Phone Dude says,
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
Which to me comes off as whoever we're playing as in FNaF 3 worked at Fazbear's Fright for a while, didn't see anything of note, potentially because it was all crappy cosplays, as Phone Dude said, and then the version that we play in FNaF 3 is the next week he comes back or is convinced to come back because Springtrap is out. Which, yeah, that part of it could work with either Henry or Mike, but at the end of the day, if the idea is Mike's going from place to place looking for evidence and things, especially looking for his dad, it would track that he goes to Fazbear's Fright to look for it. Especially when you consider the main evidence for Henry is the fact that the FNaF 3 player can breathe and has like eaten hot dog, which just could be early game weirdness with Scott having not written out the idea that there would be an immortal corpse man wandering around looking for his dad yet. And also one of Scraptrap's lines, which is, in my opinion, a lot more subjective than Orville's lines. Because Orville's lines are like have a consistent through line of he versus they. And it's all in the same monologue. Whereas a lot of Scraptrap's lines almost come off as, wow, this should have been dialogue for Springtrap, but I didn't hire voice actors yet at the time. Or at least if you feel that Scraptrap is the reason Henry should be the player in FNaF 3, Scraptrap meets Mike for the first time in 6, then you should consider Orville's lines with an equal level of authority. Sorry, I'm getting off track. Point is, this builds a pretty clear timeline for Mike's actions. At least relatively. As of the survival logbook, he's gone through some version of crazy events with the various pizzerias and attractions and all that already, including Sister Location because he draws all the casual bongos. This also means that after FNaF 1 in Sister Location, or at least after his time being a night guard, he has met the spirit Cassie enough to give clues to their name throughout the book, and maybe also met the bite victim if he is the altered text, giving him some tie to the spirits at this point in time. It also establishes why he was going to each pizzeria before he knows anything officially is up. He's looking for proof his dad is a killer. This also explains why he's willing to listen to William in the first place, because he doesn't know for a fact his dad's a killer yet, and this is the first lead he's gotten in a while. And ultimately, after he has seen that undeniably his dad's an evil lunatic, he tries to track him down from there on out in the series. And he's now opposed to him from then on out, being fully willing and content to die right there in FNaF 6, knowing everything will be put to rest. Sort of non sequitur here, because I realized there's some stuff I kind of wanted to throw into this video that I didn't have my script or original audio takes. Now, I don't think every plot beat on More Than the Restless really has meaning. I think if you try to find meaning in every single thing, we recycle back to the original problem I started with this video with. A wife, deadbeat dad, and a kid whose identity is in question, even though it obviously belongs to the dad. Maybe you could say stuff like the rental car is a reference to Midnight Motorist, which would actually confirm Afton being the guy in Midnight Motorist, but that's a side point. And maybe you could argue the wedding ring that Clara threatens to keep is like, I don't know, something that Michael finds, like Psychic Friend Fredbear or the box even, and is threatening to keep it or hoard it if Afton doesn't keep up the secrets or whatever. Like I said, we loop back to the original problem when we try to find meaning in every single sentence. I think all we have to look for is the main plot beat. The idea of lies and misdirect, Clara being an arsonist, the idea of probing someone until they finally slip up to admit something is wrong. Those are the loose core plot beats of the entire thing. And that's also why I tried to word it more as Mike is inspired by all of this, rather than this is literally Mike's life being retold on a show he watches. Oh, also, just a funny detail I noticed that there's another error in the Ultimate Guide I hadn't noticed before, which is the Ultimate Guide states that Clara threatens to sell the ring, when in fact what actually happens in the episode is that she threatens to keep the ring. It's kind of a nothing detail, but it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, I almost want to make a list of every error in the Ultimate Guide and Character Encyclopedia. But that sounds like a really, really big project, so don't expect that coming out anytime soon.